Well, welcome to Tea and Talk Virtual Edition. My name is Leslie Thompson. I am Director of Adult Programs at the Sid Richardson Museum. And before we get going, I want to start us off with how I like to begin all of our public programs, which is with what's known as a land acknowledgement. And for those who are not familiar, land acknowledgement pays tribute to the original inhabitants of the land that we are on. So we, the Sid Richardson Museum, acknowledge all Native American peoples who have lived on this land since time immemorial. And the Sid would especially like to acknowledge and pay respect to the Wichita and affiliated tribes upon whose historical homeland our museum is located. So today, in addition to members of our museum staff, we also have a special guest with us. So I'm going to go around our virtual table here and introduce each one of them according to my screen. So when I say your name, just give a quick little wave. So we've got above me, Shelby Orr, who is Director of School and Family Programs. Then below me, I've got Scott Winterroad, who is our Director of the Sid Richardson Museum. Then we've got Jesse Morgan Barnett, who is our special guest today, and he is Assistant Curator of Education at the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth, just down the street from us. Then we've got Renee Green, who's our Admin Assistant. Also on the call, we've got Betsy Thomas, who is Director of Education Resources, as well as, well, she'll pop in here in a little bit, but Janie Cumming is our Visitor Services Manager as well. So thank you everyone for being with us today. And to quickly review for those who aren't familiar with our Tea and Talk program, this is a program that we host at the museum that is really an opportunity to slow down the art viewing process. I like to think of it as a visual deep dive through a shared conversation of observations around one work of art. So often when one visits an art museum, myself included, an average visitor spends about 12 to maybe 15 seconds with one work of art, and that's just not a lot of time to really take in all the details that you see before you. Now, normally our in-person program allots about half an hour, but for the sake of this virtual edition, we will keep it down to 10 minutes. And we have on the screen with us a digital reproduction of the painting that we'll be looking at today. But I just want to remind everyone who's watching that while it is fantastic that we have the technology that we have today that allows us to see digital images of this quality, it is obviously not as good as seeing the real thing in person. So I encourage you, when you have the chance to go to museums like the Modern, please go see art in person, because you really just cannot compare to the experience of seeing artwork right there in your physical presence. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at this painting. I'm going to refrain from sharing the artist title and date until the end of our conversation, just so we can focus on the painting itself. But I'm going to go ahead and set a timer for 10 minutes. And so as I'm doing that, let's go ahead and have a conversation together about this painting. So as you're looking at this painting, share something that you notice.
While we've been sitting here and introducing everything, I've been looking at this composition, and I'm just struck by the wedge of a giant triangle that's created by the canoe and the line of the trees, because they meet perfectly at the very end. And so it creates this strange kind of compositional device of this big wedge in the painting of a triangular shape.
Okay, so you're talking about the angle of the trees up at the top, and then beneath the angle of the canoe, and kind of the shape that is making in the composition.
And then the guys leaning in, they kind of give this force. And I never noticed before, but the trees do the same thing at the top. So there's this this kind of this weight and push into that triangle that's really quite dynamic.
Yeah. So Scott's also noticing the two figures in the foreground with the canoe, and how they're leaning in that direction of the angle of the triangle, as well as the trees up above them. That's really adding to this dynamic quality and movement in a way.
It feels like all of that direction is kind of leading the eye to the focus of the one precarious character that seems to be in a different kind of position than all of the others, as he's observing them kind of casually. Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of leading your eye in that direction.
Everyone else, there's so much work and action being done, with the water and the force of canoeing upstream, and the hands in the pocket or kind of in the belt it's very strange.
He just gets relaxed back there.
One, the powerful one.
And I'm going to jump in at that and say, that's what we were talking about. I've never noticed the two figures in the background. I've only seen the three in the canoe, never seen them before.
Yeah. So we're noticing the figures in the far background that are kind of a little faded. But you can see, especially the figure that's standing erect that Jesse and Scott were pointing to earlier, is really not doing a whole lot of work compared to his friends below.
And strange because, they're right there. You can plainly see them, but I've never seen them before. So it's great that we do this.
What else do you notice?
Something about all of the grayscale nature of the paint. The fact that it kind of lacks color. It seems like maybe in the trees above the canoe in the back, it seems like maybe it's just the screen reproduction, but some slight bits of warm tones or yellows, but that it really does something for the temperature to me, and placing me into a kind of season.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, even in the black and white quality of it, it's still
the economy of the brushstrokes. I think in the back really does a lot of service to locking in your eyes on the action in the canoe, which might be why easily kind of overlook those in the background because they're kind of camouflaged in a way.
That's a good point. Yeah, I like your discussion talking about the different temperature. Even though it is a black and white or grisaille painting, there's still so much that you can gather from that. Yeah.
That's a great observation, because I think when you look at it in person, you can see there's some underpainting, and there is kind of a warmer tone under there that is kind of unexpected, and we can't really capture that completely. I think in a reproduction, it's again one of those things you've got to witness in person with the picture.
What else do you notice?
Well, speaking to what Jesse said about the economy of the brushstrokes, I always like this painting and about the difference of the rendering. So you have this guy's arm is just so rendered, and certain aspects of the painting are just draw you in, or so detailed inside the boat, things that seem like they might be almost meaningless details, and then compared to this soft focus, really loose brushstrokes back there, really draw your eye in interesting ways.
Yeah, so that contrast between very loose, kind of broad imagery versus the very the fine details. Even with the two figures in the front, looking at their faces, for me, the figure closest to us is, I can't really distinguish a whole lot features, but the figure in front of him, my goodness, the detail on that is incredible.
I love his earring.
Yeah. Their costume, too, just the middle figure's hat seems slightly different. Like the person kind of in the front of the canoe pulling kind of seems like he has something wrapped around his head, and all of their sleeves are rolled up, which is kind of an interesting detail. Maybe it just exemplifies or adds to that idea of the work that's being made. But something about the water, the contrast of the way it's divided into such a placid, calm pool of water with the rush of the stream, it makes me kind of question, the artistic liberty, or, how much one exaggerates the scene versus kind of depicting something realistically. I'm not a camper, really. I mean, I haven't spent much time, I've never canoed, but can two different pools of water exist like that? I mean, something so calm and then something so rushed.
Where's the force coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's rather
a good
abrupt.
Yeah, I don't know if the rocks, if there's more hidden under there, but yeah, that's a good question.
It does seem implausible, that stark contrast of what looks to us like very calm and placid to like the rushing rapids of the water that they're trying to push up against. Doesn't compute with me how that's possible. Yeah.
But currents are weird. So what do I know?
I mean, I've been in fairly rushing water that's gotten calm quickly, kind of the other way around. So it's probably possible. I'm wondering how long the canoe is going to last. It looks pretty beat up on the back end.
Yeah, all those cracks.
Yeah.
So do you think that's been repaired with a kind of, I mean, I don't have a lot of historical reference, but with some kind of tar or tree sap or something to...
And it's probably a birch bark canoe, right? So,
I was thinking it was the cracks of the bark, but I'm
that's
not
true.
sure.
You could just get the top layer and be fine underneath.
Does it reveal any information about, like the position of who these people might be? I mean, were all canoes, you think, like that at that time? Or is this something that's a little bit an older version? Or I don't know if it reveals anything about who the people might be.
It definitely does, and probably more so reveals the location of where they might be. And thinking about birch bark canoes is more of a northern, almost, well, and Canadian feature, especially when you think about regions. I'm not a canoe expert, but I do know that birch bark canoes are were more popular in that area, and also perhaps speak to maybe the kind of workers that these men might be as well. Yeah, but it's a really good question.
it always made me with the canoe and then back to their attire. I always think, where is this? And I make assumptions that, are they French Canadian? Is it in Canada? Is it in the United States? Where is this? I can almost hear them in my head, their language, the way they speak. That's, an assumption that I make just from the three gentlemen, the only three that I saw. So I think it's very interesting, but the birch bark canoe makes me definitely think, north, how far north? So yeah.
Something that, kind of going back to the water aspect of this, again, I mean, I think we've all identified ourselves as non-canoer experts, but the gentleman in the far back that has his oar I'm like, what good is that doing? Help. I mean, maybe he's trying to help push up the
steering?
rapids. Oh,
don't they steer that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of acts as a rudder, sort of, maybe?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems like
That
the water
sounds
would be
good.
quite shallow, since I mean,
You can see rocks.
Oh yeah.
It does seem a little illogical,
Yeah.
but for some kind of effect. But that figure in the front, I think, as he's kind of passing that space from the two different states of water, it's a really beautiful kind of just use of paint and just kind of that spread right through there is.
The forms up there are my favorite part of this, because that oar that juts up and then the canoe right there, and then his body, there's just this beautiful kind of interaction in that one little space up there of shapes that I think Remington got real, oops, I just gave away the artist name. I think he got really excited up there because it's really kind of beautifully done. And also it makes me wonder if that's part of the artistic license in that flat, placid, dark lake area that we're looking at, if that's what that is, river, I don't know. But I mean, it's almost like he's using it as a backdrop for all that detail. Like I think Shelby was pointing out how detailed all that stuff in the canoe is, but that's part of what kind of lends that kind of dynamism to that point in the triangle that I was looking at.
Right. Yeah.
Can
Well,
I
we've
ask,
actually reached our 10 minutes. And so, I mean, gosh, that goes to show you how quickly time flies when you're really spending time with a work of art. And I mean, it sounds like we still have more we could talk about here. But I'll go ahead and share, since Scott referenced the artist, that this is a painting by Frederic Remington called In a Stiff Current from 1892. And I think our viewers will, the biggest question for them might be, you know, that this is a black and white painting, and why is that? So Remington really started his career as an illustrator, and he would paint these grisaille, these black and white paintings specifically for illustration purposes. And this is one of the, I think, 3 grisaille paintings we have in our collection by Remington. And this is actually one of our non-Western paintings in our collection, because kind of getting back to what Jesse was referencing about, you know, the birch bark canoe and what that could be telling us about the figures or the location. This is kind of an area called the North Country, which was kind of in the Adirondack region of New York, which is where Remington would summer and spend, and actually where he was born and raised. And this was a painting done as an illustration for a story in Harper's Magazine that was about kind of the fur traders, Canadian, you know, kind of Chippewa Bay area, working as also the woodsman as well, which Remington has done several scenes on as well. And if anyone ever wants to know how to make a birch bark canoe, we have a blog post on our museum blog that references Remington's love of birch bark canoes. He had one in his possession that he loved canoeing. But in that blog post, had found a video done back in the 70s that recorded, I'm gonna forget which tribe he was from, but there's a native gentleman who goes through the entire process of cutting down the tree, stripping the bark, and creating, and so you can see kind of how those breaks happen, how he structures the canoe, all while using natural elements. It is fascinating. There's no dialogue, so it's a very meditative experience, but it's a really beautiful video. But bringing it back to our discussion here, we would love to continue the conversation for those who may be watching this video. If you have any comments or observations that you'd like to share with us, I encourage you to leave them in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. But otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us for Tea and Talk today. It was a fantastic conversation. Bye.